So we got some breaking news from the U.S. Supreme Court. It's Thursday morning. We expected to get some decisions today, and we just got a big one. The justices rejecting another Republican challenge on Obamacare, ruling 7-2 to dismiss the challenge. Here is the case. It was the third major challenge to Obamacare in about 10 years. The case came out of 18 Republican-led states that sued Congress back in 2017 when it stopped enforcing the tax penalty that's built into the law.
Right.
So the challengers then argued the government's non-enforcement of the mandate rendered that provision of the law from 2010 illegal, which would suggest that the whole law cannot stand, and that was roundly rejected a moment ago.
Well, there's a political thing to think about here, Bill, and that is that for years during the Trump administration, when this challenge was mounted in the courts, the Democrats said that President Trump and all Republicans were against covering people with pre-existing conditions, and they would point to this case over and over again. And there were some Republicans who said we should really drop this case, and others who said, no, it's important to move forward. But now the court once again saying, actually, you're wrong. But if you think about that 2018 midterm, one of the big issues for why Republicans lost the majority was because I think one of the issues was about pre-existing conditions directed at this case.
2018. And if you went back 8 years prior, you had the midterm where Democrats lost 63 seats in the House because they signed Obamacare into law.
Yep.
It's had that type of evolution in American society today. Karl knows it well. Karl Rove with us now. We brought you in to talk about other things, but this is breaking news, and let's get your immediate reaction with Clarence Thomas joining the majority on this, Karl.
Well, this was likely to happen because of what's called the severability clause. The Affordable Care Act was written in a way where it said if some part of this is struck down, the rest of the law remains. And that's exactly what happened. The part of the law that had to do with a penalty, a tax, if you will, was no longer being enforced. And the question was, did severability apply? That is to say, did the rest of the law stand even if that part of the law was no longer being enforced? And the court held 7-2 that was the case.
How much, Karl, does health care still is an issue in terms of not just policy, but in terms of the politics? Because for years, the Democrats really tried to beat Republicans over the head with this very issue.
Well, I think it still remains such. Republicans have a vulnerability on this because many Republican candidates just don't feel comfortable talking about it. And when they do talk about it and standing up, for example, for pre-existing conditions, they don't do as good a job of telling a story as the Democrats do. Where the Republicans do well on this is when they can personalize it. We saw this, for example, in the Missouri Senate race where Senator Hawley, in a debate, took on his opponent who attacked him for pre-existing conditions by saying, my infant son, my child has a pre-existing condition. How dare you suggest that I wouldn't want him to be covered? So Republicans have a vulnerability. They need to do more on it, and they're going to continue to have a vulnerability until they start talking about what it is that they want to do. Economy is going to be a top issue in all likelihood, as it is in virtually every election. But what we've seen in recent midterm elections is health care tends to be a pretty persistent second or third issue in the debate.
Karl, is repeal and replace Obamacare dead?
I think so. I mean, I think what people want to hear is we've heard that. We know that's where you're coming from, but what is it that you're for? Now, remember, the advantage that the Republicans have is that the Affordable Care Act affects only about 7-8% of the entire electorate. That's what's covered by it. But what the downside of that is that the rest of the electorate, particularly those that have coverage through their employer, they want to know, what are you going to do to make it better for me? And Republicans have ideas they can talk about. We want transparency in pricing and outcomes. So when you go to a doctor or go to a hospital, you know how much it's going to cost. You know how good they are at it. Republicans talk about allowing small businesses to join together and pool their risk and get the same discounts that big companies get, about allowing more people to save more money for their out-of-pocket health care expenses tax-free. There are lots of things Republicans can talk about. They just need to start talking about it.
Stephen Breyer wrote the majority opinion here, Karl, and you've been following the back and forth with progressives and the Democratic Party, calling for him to retire. In your experience, how do justices receive a message like that?
I don't think they want the court to be seen as more political. They want to have it seen as less political. And my sense is Breyer is sitting there saying, really, I'm going to sort of denigrate the court by bowing to the wishes of the hard left of the Democratic Party and bailing out when I still think I can contribute. I think this is counterproductive if that's what they're trying to achieve.
Do you remember June 30th, 2005, Carl, what happened that day? When Sandra Day O'Connor announced her resignation, and boy, that changed certainly a lot of things. And then we were off to the races to do, we would do 2 Supreme Court nominations right after that, and that really affects the court.
It does. It does. It absolutely does. But that was a personal decision by her. There was no encouragement. Right. There was no public campaign.
It was a surprise.
I think it was a surprise, a big surprise.
There are other decisions we're still waiting on. We should get them by the end of the month. Maybe we'll get another one today. It seems as if Mondays and Thursdays are pretty popular for the decisions that come out. Usually we get 2 cases when 2 cases decided when that is the deal. With regard to health care, had this gone down, what would have been the fate of millions who had signed up, Karl?
Well, the exchanges would have ended, the subsidies would have ended, and the subsidies are very lavish, far in excess of what President Obama promised they would be. He said that this would be a far less costly program than it's turned out to be. And think about it. It covers fewer people at a much greater cost, and the idea that somehow or another this solved the problem and everybody has coverage, and that you can keep your existing plan if you like your existing plan, or keep your doctor if you like your doctor. All of these promises turned out not to be true. Once again, proving that probably in politics and in public policy, incremental reform is better than grandiose promises of major transformational changes.
Let's add Chief Legal Correspondent Shannon Bream to our coverage here. Shannon, you cover the court. This was a 7-2 decision. Give us your read on that. This is a new court, so I'm curious what you think about how this went down at 7-2.
Yeah, and remember, there was so much talk during Justice Coney Barrett's confirmation process that she potentially would be the vote to get rid of Obamacare. That was what we heard over and over and over again from the Democratic senators during her confirmation hearing. She was in the 7, voting 7-2 to uphold this today. So it goes to show you that, listen, confirmation hearings are always going to be fraught with politics. There's going to be a lot of heat. There's going to be a lot of drama. But at the end of the day, you can't predict how these justices are going to vote. And that was the #1 selling point against her. So again, she's in the 7-2. Justice Alito writes this dissent, and he is joined by Justice Gorsuch. And it sums up this. He says, today's the 3rd installment of our epic Affordable Care Act trilogy follows the same pattern and installments as 1 and 2. In all 3 episodes, with the Affordable Care Act facing a serious threat, the court has pulled off an improbable rescue. So he's obviously not a fan of this decision today because, as you guys have talked about, it only got to standing, this issue, whether or not these plaintiffs could actually bring the case. So it doesn't get to the underlying merits. For a lot of us, it's a little bit surprising because for the court to hear the case and keep it for so long, you think they're coming to a judgment on the merits. Would be interesting always to be a fly on the wall during these conversations, but it took them this long to get to 7-2 to not actually get to the merits.
Shannon, same question to you as with Karl. Those who wanted the law to stand, who are victorious at the moment on this, felt that 20 million Americans would be thrown off the insurance rolls. And Democrats during COVID, they liked the boast that more than 1 million Americans signed up to Obamacare. And your coverage of this case over the past, what is it? Is it 8 years or 11 years now? How much consideration has Chief Justice Roberts or others on the court given to the reality that millions of Americans have signed up?
Yeah, I think the longer the law went on, the more it became entrenched in the healthcare system, the more that probably became a consideration for the court. It certainly came up in arguments for those who were defending the law, talking about the millions of Americans who would face the possibility of having to now find another source for their health care if the ACA were to go away. Now, that first big giant case that was heard years and years ago, that wasn't the case. But over the years, there have been numerous challenges, legal challenges, all across the country and back at the Supreme Court. And I think that's definitely become part of the calculation about the reality of how it would play out if they struck down the law or major parts of it.
Karl, maybe a last question to you, which is how big an issue will this be in 2022 for the midterms? Well,
health care will be a big issue. I'm not yet convinced that the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, will be a big issue, but health care will be a big issue. We don't know exactly what the conditions in the country are going to be next fall, but we know the economy is going to be number one in all likelihood, and the health care, as I say, in recent elections has tended to be number 2 or number 3 or number 4 below that.
Thank you, Karl.
Thank you, Shannon.
Shannon, quick work. Shannon Bream, Karl Rove, nice to have you both here.
Great to have you.
7-2
Thank you.
decision, the ACA stands.